All right, now we're recording. Okay, so before we get started, I got to do a few things. So first things first, I want to give a special shout out to Richard Long, Danielle Thomas, and Swati Diva Carla. They were my first guests, like back in Baltimore. So thank you to them. They did great interviews, and when they didn't have to, because I'm sure you understand how weird it is when someone calls you up and says, "Hey man, can you come talk to me?" For what? That's just because I want to talk to you. Other questions, is this podcast called the cubela or the cubela podcast? And the answer to that question is you can call it whatever you want, but officially it's the cubela podcast. And also good news. So since I first started this thing back in February, March or April, there are at least 4 to 5 people in Canada that are listening. There are 2 to 3 people in the Philippines. There's 2 to 3 people in Ireland. 1 to 3 people in Cambodia, and then 1 to 3 people in India that for some reason have found this podcast and are listening. So to those people, I don't know who you are, but I'm very happy to have you. So look me up on Instagram. Say hi. I would love to hear from you. I have no idea who you are, but thank you for tuning in. All right. So Ara, are you ready to begin?
Oh, yeah.
Without further ado, cue the music. All right, so thank you for coming in, Ara. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a brief introduction and then we'll go ahead and officially get started. Okay, so your name is Dr. Ara Darakjian. You are a graduate of UCLA. You graduated from the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine, which is where I met you, right? And you're a 4 times Dean Cup champion, correct?
I guess so.
That's an inside joke there, people. And then you graduated from USC residency for psychiatry, which is, again, where I worked with you for 3 years, right? And now you work in Pasadena, throughout the Los Angeles area, and we also share an office together now. So I've been around you for about 7 years, I think.
That's right.
Yeah, long time. So the reason why I invited you here is for 2 reasons, okay? When I talk to you about psychiatry, you don't turn red, right? But you get excited. You just did it. Your eyes widen a little bit for 2 particular topics of conversation. One is unnecessary labs. You get your eyes widen a little bit for that one. And the second one is low carb diet. So I want to know your thoughts on the low carb ketogenic diet. That's why you're here.
Okay.
So, my first question is a very basic one. What exactly, and for the people that might be in the Philippines, Ireland, Cambodia, India, or somewhere else in the United States that don't know, what is the ketogenic diet? What is this based on?
I guess the simple definition, a ketogenic diet is one that causes people to produce ketones in their blood. The way you can achieve that is A, by not eating for a few days, or B, by just restricting carbohydrate to 20 to maybe 40 grams per day. And that depends on the person and how much exercise you do. But generally, that will cause your body to start producing ketones, usually from fat, is where these ketones are produced from. Because when you stop eating sugar or carbs, which are basically a bunch of sugar molecules linked together, like your pasta or your potatoes are basically a bunch of glucose molecules put together, then your body starts thinking that it needs to produce its own sugar and its own energy. So that kicks up your liver, and it starts this process that winds up burning fat and then those ketones can be used by the brain as a source of energy. Whereas everybody else is mainly relying on the glucose for energy.
Okay, glucose being sugar,
Yes.
pasta, bread, all of that being carbohydrates.
Right, and those are basically, eventually, all of that is broken down into glucose in your blood, which is very commonly measured by blood tests or with finger sticks, and that's the basic energy kind of source for your brain, your heart, your muscles. Everything takes up glucose in order to convert that to energy for your cells.
So if I take out the glucose, I use some other form of energy. In this case, it would be ketones.
Right. But everybody, when you're on a keto diet, it doesn't mean your blood sugar goes to zero.
Okay. Yeah.
Your blood sugar just kind of doesn't have those spikes. Fasting regular blood sugar is supposed to be between 60 and 100. I think it's milligrams per deciliter. But in diabetes, the definition of diabetes is you're fasting when you're not eating. Blood sugar is above 100. So, but when anybody eats sugar or carbs, their blood sugar goes over 100 and, maybe at 150 or whatever, and that's normal. But with people on the keto diet, because they're not eating sugar or carbs, their blood sugars don't spike like that.
Okay. So you still have glucose in your system. You just don't have the spikes of it.
You don't have the spikes, and it's much more constant. And these days they have continuous glucose monitors for diabetics. So this is a really easy test for that people are able to collect their own data, and they'll on Twitter there's some keto people especially they're like, what's better for you, an apple or a potato or whatever? And
so what's the answer to that question?
Some will even show that the apple makes their glucose spike more than like a potato or a Snickers bar or whatever. And so it's kind of their thing that, like, you've been told fruit is healthy. Well, fruit is not necessarily healthy if it's making your blood sugar spike like that.
Well, that's what I think is very confusing for people, because if you come to someone and you say this apple is harmful for you, we've been hearing about this for 50 years, maybe even longer, the importance of eating lots of fruits and vegetables. I think vegetables are still good, right?
I mean, for the purpose, I won't go down. What you're.
It was more of a ridiculous question.
We'll stick with the line that you're going off of. We've been told.
Don't tell me vegetables are bad. Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that, Ara.
No, they're fine. They don't have that many carbs. Most of them don't have carbs unless they're starchy.
Okay. Yeah. So vegetables for the most part are good. All right, for the most part, we can hold on to that.
I don't even want to get into this like good or bad like thing yet.
Okay. You gotta cut things right to the chase.
I think the point is, though, what you're saying, we've been told for this many years that fruit is healthy.
Yes.
And so I think it's important that we ask, why have we been told that?
Well, that's one. But even before that, the why is important also.
Yeah.
But essentially, fruits are not across the board something we should be consuming in large amounts.
Like, just my opinion?
No, opinion wise, just based on the low carb, what the thought process is behind having too much sugar in your diet. Yeah,
well, you can consume. I think from a keto perspective, you can consume up to 20 grams of carbs a day. If you want, you can have blackberries if you really like. Blackberries are pretty low carb.
Yeah, you can eat fruits, but just you don't want to eat too many of them just because of the carb load.
That's right.
Okay, all right. So, yeah, that's what I was driving at. I think that, at least in my head, fruits is something you could just eat all day. No problem, no harm at all. But what you're saying is essentially you still have to consider the amount of sugar that's being taken into your system.
Absolutely.
Even though it's a fruit.
Absolutely.
Something that has been told to us is benign.
Yes, right.
Right. Okay. That's why I was asking about vegetables. Are vegetables benign too? Don't worry about it. Okay. So my next question, that's what ketogenic is. That's the basis behind it. You're trying to at least lower the amount of carbs that you're using so that you can use a different energy supply so that you don't have the spikes.
That's right.
Okay, in your system. Now, my next question is, you somewhat explained it, but I want to know why do I care about that? What's the point? Like, what happens if I follow this ketogenic diet? What are the benefits?
Okay. So I think by far the most widespread, most important public health issue in America is diabetes, obesity. Some doctors these days call it diabesity. Some people refer to it as an epidemic. This is something in America more than the rest of the world that's just rampant. And for the last 50 years or so, I heard that this all started with a president in the 50s or the 60s, I can't remember which one, having a heart attack. And it scared everybody about, wow, this president was not that old. What are we doing that's causing heart disease? So then it started all this research into what's causing heart disease. And through a number of kind of biased and not very scientifically controlled studies and research done, they concluded that saturated fat was the driver. So then they made all these food pyramid things, all this education about, grains and cereals being the base of the pyramid, and then, fruits and vegetables having this many servings a day, and then rice and blah, blah, blah. And at the very tip of it, it was meat and protein and maybe dessert and cheese, and because they wanted to lower fat as much as possible.
Fat was the enemy.
Fat was considered the enemy, and then came the other blood studies on lipids and cholesterol, and there's association, I think, between high cholesterol and heart disease, and then the statins came in to lower cholesterol because that was viewed as the culprit, with pretty tiny effect sizes that were kind of amplified by saying the difference between absolute risk and relative risk, but we don't have to get into that. And now, we have these drugs that will absolutely tank your LDL, but with no benefit in heart disease risk. So, but we, as the medical community, continue to look at these past studies that confirm the cholesterol heart hypothesis and not pay attention to the things more recently that may cause serious doubt into this cholesterol heart disease ideas.
Okay. So when you say, because I want to go over some of those terms that you use, LDL, cholesterol, HDL is another one. These are all acronyms for the fat, measurements of fat that you see on labs.
That's right.
Common lab tests.
Different types of fat that is present in everybody's blood.
Yeah. And you use the term absolute risk, and these are all terms that just based on research just tells you how much at risk you are for a certain disease, just measurements.
That's
using
right.
research.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that because I've forgotten some of my epidemiology terms. Okay. So again, what happens? So if you follow the ketogenic diet, and we're talking about on averages here because everyone's different. If you follow the ketogenic diet, the benefits would be what?
So I guess there's two ways to answer this, because in the general population, some people do the keto diet because for weight loss. Some people do it because of they have diabetes and they want to get their diabetes under control. And by the way, if this is not medical advice, but if you have a doctor that is, I guess, keto friendly and passionate about keto, and you're diabetic and you're on insulin, if you start the keto diet, you have to cut your insulin in half on day one, or else you'll get hypoglycemic. If they
just try to do the ketogenic diet, they have to essentially make adjustments to their insulin.
Yeah, they have to cut it in half.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you think about a doctor's job in today's world, it's like the doctor is paid to prescribe medication. What about these doctors that are taking people off medication? There's all these anecdotes about people with diabetes coming off their medication using the keto diet. And Without that, you don't get the harmful side effects. Insulin causes people to gain weight. Statins can have side effects, but nobody's getting any credit for taking people off medication. They get paid less by insurance companies when the patient isn't on as many medications, and they don't have as complex of a picture. So, sorry, I think I got off track. So, but your question is, why would somebody want to do it? And so most people that do it, I think just it's for metabolic health type of reasons. Initially, the ketogenic diet for the last century was used for epilepsy, especially treatment-resistant epilepsy in children. And it has a good success rate, probably over 50%. I can't remember exactly. But, it's not 100%, but it's pretty significant. And actually, this isn't a new idea either. The doctors in the earliest 20th century, when they diagnosed diabetes with sugar in the urine, they would, their suggested treatment was to cut all carbohydrate from the diet. So This is also not something new. It's just something that's been buried and suppressed by all these other forces at work. So,
either by accident or nefarious purposes.
Exactly.
one or the other.
I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist.
Right, yeah, that's cool.
But it's where the money's at, Processed food industry has definitely made a killing off of selling their food and not being considered unhealthy. There's a lot of messaging going on, like Coca-Cola, paying for advertising that encourages calories in versus calories out. As long as you exercise enough, you can have your Coke. It's not unhealthy. I won't get into that. But coming back to, so there's a metabolic disease, there's epilepsy, and my interest, which is, was when I started doing the ketogenic diet, I felt that I had much more mental clarity. I felt like I was much less bogged down after I ate food during the day. I felt much less sleepy. I think my sleep improved at night. Just all kinds of mental benefits. And I don't know, you could have probably diagnosed me as dysthymic before. And then when I went on the keto diet, I was no longer so cloudy in my head. So I had more energy to actually have, affect when I spoke to people, more energy to do the things I wanted to do. So this is a common thing that there are anecdotes about, not much like randomized control data. But I think this is something that really needs a lot of study, is the ketogenic diet for psychiatric disorders. There's some case reports of actually schizophrenia, auditory hallucinations going to zero with a few patients that were put on a ketogenic diet. And so I think we really have to pay attention to that, because that's kind of flies in the face of, our other models and our other treatments. So
antipsychotics.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned dysthymia. So you're talking about it's not depression, but it's just a low grade mood, fogginess throughout the day, and it's pretty consistent and pretty flat. Yeah.
I think the criteria is you have to have it for 2 years or longer, and it never gets to a major thing where you're majorly depressed, not eating, not with really poor sleep.
But you're just not, something's not right. Your spirits are just not quite where they should be.
Yeah.
You're just low for reasons that you don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're saying is once you switch to the ketogenic diet, low carb diet, you notice these differences. You're a little bit more energetic, mood was a little better, affect changed.
I mean, not a little bit. It was
it's pretty dramatic.
Very dramatic, yeah.
Okay.
And so, in residency, it was during, I think, third year residency, and my classmates noticed I wasn't falling asleep in the afternoon lectures anymore, and that I was asking questions, and I was, alert. So
was that a good thing?
What, that I was alert
and
able
to
pay attention?
Asking questions. Asking questions.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, there was Oh yeah. So what I was going to ask you about was, the mechanism behind why that's happening. So essentially,
Good question.
So your brain is essentially using glucose primarily. But from what I remember, refresh my memory. Once you switch to the ketogenic diet, what is your brain like? What's happening there?
Yeah. Instead of using, it still uses glucose, but it also uses ketones as another energy source. So, I'm not an expert on the biochemistry of things, but basically it changes the way your mitochondria even produce energy, and it's supposed to end up using or producing fewer free radicals, causing less oxidation, so on and so forth. There's been a few, I think, rat studies that show that it improves the neurotransmitter GABA in your brain, and I think there's a few other mechanisms for like why ketones might be beneficial for like anxiety or depression. I think there's two, in thinking about the mechanism, which I have done a bit about, there's two, I guess, main categories. One is it helpful because you're using ketones for energy, or is it helpful because the individual has an intolerance, the individual being me, has an intolerance to carbohydrates, that my digestive system, my genetics, my makeup is not very suited for having a high load of carbohydrates ingested. And therefore, I'm more like taking out a toxin rather than using this different energy source.
Right, because different food sources have different effects on people.
Yes.
I was going to ask you about gluten.
On different individuals. Yeah. Like, for example, let's say I was gluten intolerant and I went keto, eliminated bread, and I felt better. It's like, well, is it the ketones in my blood that my brain is using now, or is it because I cut out gluten that I now feel so much better? And I've been tested, but I think in order to be, first of all, there's multiple different tests for gluten sensitivity, and so if one is negative, it's not necessarily that you're negative to all of them. Second thing is you have to be ingesting gluten for a period of like 3 weeks prior to the test if you want it to be legitimate. And I wasn't doing that because I was already keto.
So you're not quite sure if you have a gluten sensitivity or not.
That's correct.
But people do have gluten sensitivities and also might benefit from just cutting out carbs in general. It could be both.
Yes.
Or one.
Yes.
It's just hard for you to know because you had already cut out bread and stuff that contain gluten in it.
That's right.
Okay. So just going back for a couple of things. So I want to make sure, because not everyone either remembers cell biology or even took cell biology. You mentioned the mitochondria. Okay. Mitochondria are essentially the parts of a cell that give energy to the cell and thus give energy to the rest of the body.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned free radicals. Free radicals, correct me if I'm wrong, but these are the products of when something is broken down that can sometimes be harmful to the body. Free radicals.
Right. Free radicals can have the potential to damage DNA, to just cause damage and can increase, cancer risk and all that. So
yeah. So just to clarify all of that. So okay. So
one more note on that before we go on.
Yeah.
There have been studies about the mechanism by which the ketogenic diet reduces seizures. And I think one of them even found that probably was in rats, but that it was mediated by the gut microbiome. So the gut microbiome is something that is receiving more and more attention these days, and especially in psychiatry too, about this gut-brain axis. And so one way the ketogenic diet may also work is by changing the gut microbiome. So that's another interesting idea. Of course, these things need to be fleshed out.
You want to talk a little bit more about the gut microbiome?
All I can say about the gut microbiome is that there's a lot of promise, and but not a lot of solid, usable information. That's why I don't even harp on the mitochondria stuff, because like I'm really focused on what information is like solid and usable. And until we get more info on like things that are more exact, more reliable info, I'm like, it's not even worth thinking about, you know?
No. We're all about speculation on this podcast. I'm trying to get O'Keefe to come on, because he's GI. I'm trying to get him to come on and talk about anything related to GI, because it's a fascinating field. The gut microbiome, essentially the gut is so connected to psychiatry because of the amount of serotonin that's found in your gut. There's more serotonin in your gut than there is in your brain. And so there's just speculation as to how much of what's actually going on in your gut does interact with what's going on in your brain. Because right now, that's just how we think about it, changing the amount of serotonin in our brain, neurotransmitters in our brain versus in our gut, which again connects to your diet in many ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, we're all about speculation. If I can get O'Keefe to come in, and so I just spoke with him yesterday. If I can get him to come in and speak a little bit about gut microbiome, that would be fantastic, I think. Because even though it's early on in the field, I do think it's quite fascinating. Okay. So, I mean, we spoke a little bit about its effects on you, right? And what you might expect in general. Sounds like energy would be increased, fogginess goes away, mood improves. So I'm curious, because I remember in your third year, maybe my second year, when you did switch, and the exact circumstances I don't recall. I just remember, generally speaking, we were all talking about you switching to ketogenic, and I was like, "What? What's he doing?" Like, can you talk to me about the experience of someone who goes from? Actually, can you tell us what your diet was before, and can you tell us what your diet is now, and how that transition was?
Yeah, sure. I guess I wasn't much of I cooked from time to time, but I didn't really enjoy cooking. So I did eat and order a lot. I think, so I'll just tell you the story of when I first decided. I was driving home from work, and I was listening to some podcast, not really a diet-related podcast, but just a podcast, these guys, and one of them was diabetic and was talking about their experience going keto, and then the host, who wasn't diabetic, was talking about the mental clarity, and I was like, well, maybe I should really try this. And you're gonna laugh, but I was on my way home, and I was planning on stopping at In-N-Out anyway.
Oh, of course. Of course you were. Yeah, of course.
Me and Thomas always debate about In-N-Out, but anyways.
No, stop right there. In-N-Out, I don't care if you're from California. It's overrated. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm saying it's overrated. And Shake Shack is better, objectively. You can continue if you want to. You can get back to business. Doesn't matter to me. I'm just saying what I'm saying.
To me, they're just different things anyway. Anyway, so
did I knock you off your train of thought?
So I would have gotten, just double fries, and I was already off soda. I never really after I was like 17 or 18, I never really enjoyed soda. I was like, why do we have to have like sugary drink in addition to whatever? Anyways, it wasn't because of health reasons. I don't think. It was just kind of like, it doesn't really appeal to me. So instead of getting my usual, I was like, I'll match the calories, but I'll go low carb. So I ended up getting a 4x4 protein style, which is...
Tell people what the protein style is. All right.
So it's basically wrapped in lettuce instead of with bread.
All right.
And there's 4 patties of meat and 4 pieces of cheese, and then the lettuce and the tomatoes. And answer your earlier question about fruit, tomatoes are fruit. They do have carbs, but if you eat it in moderation, it doesn't mean you're out of ketosis. So anyway, so I ate it, and after dinner I didn't feel all that foggy, and then the next day I was kind of like, let me keep this keto thing going. Again, no carbs, and for that first weekend I had so much energy. I was kind of like almost borderline manic, but so I was like, wow, there's so many hours in a day. What do I do? But, that kind of faded over time. I think probably, thankfully, I wouldn't want to be hyped up like that all the time. But I continued to have like really good sleep. I continued to have really good energy. And so what did I eat before? I would cook for myself. I would order out. Basically, there's a lot of things like especially sushi or Asian foods with
lots of rice. The
sauces have a lot of sugar. A lot of things have a lot of starch, potatoes or even thickeners in soup. Yeah, I wouldn't eat a lot of it, but I always thought meat was really important for me for energy. So I was a meat eating person. But yeah, just I guess I was eating an average American diet, standard American diet.
Yeah, but how hard was the transition for you? Was it difficult?
Not really. I think a lot of things have hidden carbs, and that part's kind of difficult. So sometimes you only eat what you really trust is what you cook for yourself, and then other times you just rely on nutrition labels to have correct information about carbs. And yeah, and then by the way, you can subtract fiber because fiber will count as a carbohydrate, but it's not digested. So a lot of people talk about net carbs. That's subtracting the fiber because you're just going to go out. You're not going to be absorbing that into your body anyway. So yeah, that's a note to make too.
The reason why you said it was fun because you mentioned the In-N-Out store is because I've been with you when you order that protein style at In-N-Out, and I tried to eat it that way also. No, I would never do that again.
Doesn't taste good?
It's not that. It's not the bread. The bread's purpose, in my opinion, is to contain the product.
Yeah.
It's also filler, which is one reason why I don't know if you remember, but I've also taken out bread. Like I eat bread products, but I don't put things in bread anymore because if you remove the bread from a sandwich and you just eat the contents, you see how little it is that you're actually eating. Like the bread is filler. But for a cheeseburger, it contains the product.
What if it was like in a plate?
I would probably cut it up.
Yeah. If you had cut it up with a fork and knife, like you'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I would probably cut it up. But the reason why is because I'm watching you eating it, and I was eating mine. I was having a terrible time. You just looked fine with it. That's okay. And I don't know if that is experience with the diet or whether it's person to person. But I'm bringing that up because I wonder about effectiveness versus efficacy. Okay. And for people that don't know what I'm referring to here, there's, just again, we're talking research here for medications, but in this case, we're talking about a diet. You have efficacy, which is, if I put this in a lab with controlled circumstances, you have the financial means, you have the education to understand what goes into a ketogenic diet, it would work perfectly. But effectiveness wise, in real life, people actually being able to tolerate a lettuce bun, that it's more difficult. So I guess you're able to adapt to it. You didn't have too many issues with it. But for other people, what would you say the biggest problem is switching from, a regular American, I'm going to eat whatever the hell I want to diet to being way more controlled with a ketogenic diet?
Yeah, that's a good question. Also, a source of a lot of controversy. So, for me, it wasn't that difficult. Like I told you, I wasn't that big of a fan of soda. I wasn't that big of a fan of sweets. I think my body already made me feel not very good when I had a lot of sugar. So, and it's kind of like being zapped with lightning every time I did eat sugar, because then I would feel really crappy the next day, or for a number of days. So I think what you're asking is a really good question, and I think there's a lot of individual variability with that.
Okay.
So always with medicines, there's a lot of individual variability. With me, it wasn't that hard. there's some perks of the keto diet that you can eat as much as you want, as much as you can eat as much bacon as you want, you can eat as much meat as you want, you can eat as much cheese as you want.
Now we're talking. Yeah.
So to somebody overweight, you could tell them you can eat as much as you want and you'll lose weight. They'll be like, you're kidding. But it's true. The reason for that is when you eat protein and fat, it's very satiating. So you end up not wanting to eat. When you eat sugar, it makes your sugar spike, then your insulin spikes, and insulin will cause your blood sugar to go down, and then you'll feel hungry again. So sugar and carbs as food, they kind of work against their purpose, which is to make people feel full and feel satisfied. But there are some people that have a really hard time giving up carbohydrate. So I think that is really where our research needs to be, is to find out what are these individual differences that make some people really, it's really easy for them to give up carbs. Other people, it's not so easy. Some people feel really good giving up carbs like me. Some people, they don't feel a lot better. And I think that's fundamentally what makes it harder or difficult or harder or easier for people to stay on it.
If you're experiencing a lot of benefit, you'll stick with it.
Yeah. That's why a lot of people ask me about keto and about doing it. And I say, well, what's your goal? What are you trying to do? What about your life is not satisfactory right now? Because it does take a certain degree of being firm and saying no when people offer you things to eat at their houses, or if you're at a restaurant and pushing away the bread. Like, what's your goal with this? What are you trying to accomplish? Because it's off the beaten path of what the rest of society thinks, and yeah, some people have a really hard time with it. There's artificial sweeteners, which help some people, and then other people, they feel that the artificial sweeteners didn't fix their problem because they were still addicted to that sweetness. But when they cut out all of this sweetener stuff, then they're able to stay on the wagon.
Yeah.
But then there's, I've heard one anecdote of somebody that they fell off the wagon once and they gained 40 pounds back.
Yeah. Yo-yo dieting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then they went keto again and then they lost it all again. And then they're basically like an alcoholic. Like one drink might kill you. Mm-hmm. So, there's this idea of addiction with some people. So a lot of individual differences, a lot of reasons to stay on it or get off of it. And so I think, it's not anymore a question of whether it works or not, but what from individual to individual makes it easier or harder to, stay on the diet or get off of it. And
their circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I think we had a discussion about the labs. Some people's labs are different than other people's labs. And what's a high for somebody might not be a high for another person. What might be a low for someone might not be a low for another person. Mm-hmm. We might have been talking about hemoglobin, I think.
Right.
We were probably talking about hemoglobin.
I'll tell you the most important lab that nobody does is a fasting insulin level.
Okay, talk about it. Your eyes are lighting up.
So, a lot of keto doctors will wax lyrical about insulin.
When you say keto doctor, what does that mean in particular?
I guess I'm referring just broadly to the community of doctors that are passionate about keto diets, about metabolic health, about using food instead of medication, basically to cure some of these metabolic diseases that we have.
Of any specialty? Psych, internal med, peds?
Yeah, I think most of them are internal medicine or cardiology.
Okay.
There's a podcast called Low Carb MD, and they interview not just doctors, but they do end up interviewing a lot of different doctors from different specialties that have basically come across. There was even an orthopedic surgeon that became a low carb champion. I can't remember his name right now, but I think he was from Australia. I think Gary Fettke is his name. or it could be a journalist. I mess up the two.
Did you say Australia?
Yeah.
We got to put him on the list.
Good luck.
I can't wait to get somebody from Australia.
There were some doctors that were put on trial. Like there was a doctor in South Africa named Tim Noakes, and he was basically advocating for low carb on Twitter, and a dietitian reported him to the medical board, and he got put on trial for recommending a keto diet, and it was a very lengthy
criminal.
Well, no, for the medical board.
Oh, for his board. That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were, deciding if they should revoke his license. So there's this lengthy trial. I think and he was, exonerated, and then they appealed. So then he had to kind of do the same thing again. And then he was found, to not be guilty. So there's some very, powerful establishment forces that want to suppress this low carb voice as well. Again, not to be a conspiracy theorist. Yeah.
Okay, but you were going to a specific lab. This is the tangents, man.
Sorry.
Is what we do. No, this is what we do. It's okay. Yeah. So you were talking about a specific lab that you thought was very important that is not respected or utilized as much as it should be.
That's right. So I think there's more studies that need to be done on this because I haven't really come across anything clear, but a lot of low carb doctors will point to fasting insulin as a measure of metabolic health, and that is more important for predicting heart disease risk or diabetes risk than any other level blood test, including LDL cholesterol, triglycerides, HDL, any of those lipids. And basically the argument is a high insulin will tell you that somebody's heading in the direction of diabetes before a high glucose will, because it tells you that they're already amping up their insulin in their body to try to bring the sugars down. And once your insulin isn't able to reach those levels anymore, or diabetes patients are often insulin resistant. So the same amount of insulin doesn't lower their blood sugar the same amount, then you kind of go over this threshold and you become diabetic. But before that, there's years of high insulin. So that can really foreshadow that metabolic health decrease before it even happens.
Yeah. Oh, well, now that I think about it, let me quickly go over why insulin is so important. So diabetes is not just high blood sugar. It's your body's inability to either produce insulin or use insulin. Right?
That's right, yeah.
And insulin is needed because once you take in food and you break it down and it gets into your bloodstream, essentially, your body then needs to take the nutrients that you've eaten and absorb it into your body to be used by your organs and other body systems. If your insulin is not working or you don't have any insulin, you're essentially starving yourself. You're eating, but you're not actually able to utilize the nutrients. Mm-hmm. That's why we keep talking about insulin. That's what diabetes is. It's not just high blood sugar. It's just your body's inability to take nutrients and actually use it. Not producing insulin or not being able to use it. So that's why that's so important. Mm-hmm. So we spoke about ease of which you would be able to switch to the keto diet.
Right.
How much, this might be hard for you to do like on the spot, but how much per week or per month would you say it costs like to eat or follow the ketogenic? Like I would call it a culture actually, not just a diet. How much, is this affordable? Like what?
It really is a way of life. Okay. But I think if you try to eat out and get keto meals outside, it's going to be expensive because meat is more expensive than, the potatoes and the rice. If you go to a supermarket though, and you buy a pound of ground beef, that's $5. So, you can buy ground beef. It's probably the cheapest thing. If you go to a butcher, you can probably get all kinds of meat for not a lot of money. You can eat ground pork, ground turkey, you can eat steaks, you can eat salmon, you can eat sausages, and did I say bacon?
You said bacon earlier.
And cheeses, and yeah, so it doesn't have to be expensive. If you go eat out and ask for extra bacon, they might charge you an extra $3. That's for 2 or 3 pieces of bacon. It's kind of crazy.
Business.
Yeah, but if you make your eggs, extremely satiating, extremely healthy. They got choline, which is an essential nutrient for your brain, very basically a staple of any keto diet. Like, you're gonna have a lot of eggs, and don't be afraid of the cholesterol that you ingest from the egg, because for a while the medical advice was, if you have high cholesterol, don't eat cholesterol. But then they did more studies and they found that oral intake of cholesterol has nothing to do with your cholesterol levels in your blood. So just another way that kind of the medical wisdom has really been proven wrong in the last 20 years. But, I don't think, I think doctors, a lot of doctors today, they will still hold to that. They will tell you to eat less fat, eat less cholesterol, while it has nothing to do with your actual lipid markers.
Yeah, obviously what we talked about earlier is that everyone's different, and consult your doctor.
True. Yeah.
This isn't medical advice. Consult your doctor. Yeah. And but overall, the stuff that we've learned in the past is not necessarily what the research has shown to be true today.
Yes.
So just looking further into it, asking your doctors more questions, trying to find the diet that works for you is best.
Yeah. And it's kind of the sad thing about American medicine today is that, going to one doctor versus another, you can hear something completely different. And that's especially true of, if you go to a keto doc versus if you go to a non-keto doc. There's stories of diabetics losing a bunch of weight, getting off their insulin, getting off their diabetes meds, going back to their regular primary care doctor, and their LDL becomes elevated. And the doctor says, they focus on that high LDL level, and they say, this isn't good. You got to stop this keto diet. And the patient says, are you crazy? I lost 50 pounds. I'm off my meds. How can you say that this is not good for me? And that's just kind of emblematic of the system that we're in. And then I guess one more thing that's another confounder in all this, because a lot of keto people will be advocates of real food. They say eat real food. And one other type of food that's kind of implicated in poor health is seed oils, or before in the 70s it was recommended to eat margarine instead of butter. But margarine is highly processed, and it's has a lot of unhealthy things about it. Seed oils today, like canola oil or grapeseed oil, or these like really cheap oils, like the Crisco and all that. Those are also obesogenic, or they can cause diabetes or obesity in mice.
Type of oils that you cook with. And,
because they're highly processed. They have, I don't know if they have trans fats or what the idea was, but basically they weren't initially something humans consumed, over the last, centuries. So it also has some effect on the metabolic system. So keto people will always encourage olive oil, avocado oil, butter, even animal fat like tallow or lard. These are naturally occurring fats and oils, coconut oil. So always eat real food is another message.
So real food, not processed food.
Right.
Yeah, it's the terminology that I think that gets people. I mean, even the term trans fat, like what is that? So, I mean, the way I think, just to cut to the chase, trans and what are the other types of terms for the fat? It's just
there's like monounsaturated, there's polyunsaturated, there's trans fats, and I think everybody agrees now that trans fats are harmful.
But it's essentially if you look at the molecule itself, it's just the way that the molecule is structured.
That's right. Yeah.
That's all. It's just the way the molecule is structured. And if the way a molecule is structured is not advantageous or beneficial for your body, again, to digest, that's what we're talking about here. Your body's ability to digest or metabolize it is bad for you. Mm-hmm. That's what we're saying. So trans fats versus monosaturated, what are the best ones?
There's saturated or unsaturated are the distinctions people make, and I forget right now which one's butter and which one's margarine, but like basically stay away from these these other oils. They have to heat them up to like 700 degrees Celsius or something like in order to produce them. It's just like our bodies weren't made to deal with that. So
yeah. So when you process things, you're changing the structure of what would naturally be a regularly structured carbohydrate.
That's right.
That's essentially
a fat. Yeah,
a fat. Excuse me. Stuck on carbs. So So going back to culture.
Yeah.
Okay. Because like here's the reality of the situation. That I can see. It's a lot of meat. Because you're searching for fats, a little bit of protein, low carbs.
Well, moderate protein. Any meat will have a good amount of protein.
Your eyes widen again.
But the most important thing is just to avoid the carbs.
Avoid the carbs.
Yeah.
The reason why I bring that up is because you have the culture of eating more meat. Mm-hmm. You have other cultures, and I'm just bringing up random ones, but it's just thoughts that are going through my head. You have people like Peter that are saying you shouldn't eat meat at all.
Yeah.
You have vegans. You have all of these conflicting diets that are also, I would say, are cultures.
Yeah.
If you go on to Twitter and you look at, I follow the PETA, and they're always advocating for a vegan diet.
Yeah.
The culture that sticks out to me as one of the ones that I think we both agree on is our culture, which is the medical field. We have sort of a culture too. Mm-hmm. And it's not so much clashing like, a vegan would with someone who's ketogenic. It's more so, I would say, not helping the situation, because I don't know if you remember, did we have any nutrition lectures? Yeah. No. I've never talked to another doctor that had like an extensive nutrition course.
That's because the information is
it's all over the place.
It's all over the place. There's nothing agreed upon. The nutrition science is not really based on good foundations. All of the science is based on of food frequency questionnaires, which are have questionable validity.
But we're psychiatrists. I mean, we're talking about research. Like, we don't have x-rays. We use labs and everything, but a lot of the stuff that we do is, I mean, we have research behind it, thankfully, because we have about 50 or 60 years, maybe longer than that. But some stuff, you're not going to get finite evidence behind something that works. Lithium. Why is that effective for bipolar disorder? We know, but we don't really know.
We don't really know, yeah.
Just being honest about it, we don't really know. Mm-hmm. We know that it works.
Right.
50 or 60 years of people taking it and people feeling better after taking it. We know.
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying about there not being a lot of evidence. And again, if you talk to someone that's a nutritionist, you will hear one thing from a nutritionist. You're going to hear something completely different from another nutritionist. Mm-hmm. The research isn't consistent. I understand.
Right. Yeah.
But I still think we could have, I feel like we could go over the keto diet. I feel like we could go over the effects of being a vegetarian, mentally, physically. And I don't remember any of that.
Well, it's all contradictory though. There's some evidence about, whole food plant-based diets being better for, cardiovascular health. And people have written books about that. There's some evidence about, it's just really funny. I was looking up diet for multiple sclerosis, There was one website, it put like it juxtaposed two different articles. One was like a starch-based diet, like basically eating potatoes.
Yeah.
And this one guy did a clinical trial and he had a positive result. They all got better. And then somebody else did a trial with like a ketogenic or low carb or paleo kind of diet, I forget. And they also had, they did a trial and they also had extremely positive results. And, the person themselves was an MS sufferer and their symptoms pretty much went away once they switched to. So
of course it went away, just magically went away. Yes.
So I think the issues also is that these diseases are heterogeneous. Like they all have different causes.
Yeah.
And we lump them into all the same category.
I agree.
Same with depression, so many different causes for depression, psychological, biological, even social. And then we lump them all into one category and then, prescribe an SSRI. I won't get off track. But,
I think you're on track. I do.
They all have so many different causes. And so, if it happens that the treatment we offer hits their basic root cause, then they have this amazing response and amazing benefit. But it doesn't happen for everybody. So individual differences are kind of the difficulty in all of medicine today. We're pretty good in medicine at, treating people emergently, stabilizing people in emergency departments. We're pretty good with, healing broken bones and all that. But chronic disease, not very good at.
Well, preventing is worse.
Preventing, yeah.
And that's why I want more education on. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be cookie cutter. Like this is the diet you put somebody on, but being able to understand the basics of the diet so that you can make variations amongst variations of people.
Yeah, and educate people.
Right. Why? For prevention. Right. I think that not so much telling somebody to go on a low carb diet is different from saying, hey, these are the benefits of not drinking soda.
Yeah.
And I don't think we discuss that in enough depth. It's probably mentioned. Like I love University of Miami. This goes for any medical school, not just ours, but this is across the board. I don't know. And again, I'm basing this off of conversations that I've had with other doctors, current medical students. We're not doing hardly any nutrition, and that is important for prevention.
Yeah.
That's why I'm driving at that. A lot of times, this obesity epidemic that you mentioned, I mean, yeah, you could switch to the ketogenic diet to treat the obesity, but if you knew beforehand, you might not have become obese, because a lot of this affects kids.
Totally, yeah, totally.
A lot of kids they're huge, and I think the idea is that sugar rots a kid's teeth, but it doesn't necessarily cause them to be obese. That's what's going on, and I just don't think there's enough education from us, and I just don't think our culture has accepted enough of preventative medicine as it relates to nutrition.
Totally, yeah.
That's what I'm driving at. All right, man. I probably got off track.
No, it's good. But there was a study recently that vegetarian diet was associated with like depression.
What?
Yeah, I'm serious.
I could believe that.
I'm serious.
I could believe that. No, I have a couple friends that are vegetarians. They're not experiencing any of that, but I would imagine there's some. But they supplement. They do a lot of supplementation, so all of the vitamins and so they don't experience the side effects. But I would imagine if you're vegetarian and aren't educated on what vitamins you need to supplement, that you're like B12, you're not getting that.
Yeah. Or choline from eggs, really essential for cognitive function.
Yeah.
There's some evidence for like cutting carbs for Alzheimer's or cognitive impairment too. So, I think some people definitely, are not suited for eating carbs, and it can really lead to a lot of things down the line, like even Alzheimer's or cognitive disease. So,
yeah. Well, I'm not going to go on I'm a child and adolescent psychiatrist. It's the opposite end of the spectrum for me.
Yeah.
All right. So you would consider yourself to be a ketogenic psychiatrist? What would you label yourself as?
Yeah, I'm a proponent. And I believe that it's not the thing for everybody, but I think for the vast majority, especially of Americans, I think it's something that is unknown. It goes under the radar. A lot of people could benefit from it if it was more normalized. Like, it's almost radicalized these days. Oh, you don't eat any carbs. It's like, so yeah, like I'm saying, there's a lot of individual differences. But I think because America is so metabolically unhealthy, I think there needs to be more messaging about going low carb. There needs to be more messaging about insulin and avoiding seed oils and avoiding fake ultra processed foods. And just in general, I think the world needs more keto than not.
Yeah. So you started up your Instagram, right? The keto. What's the title? I'm on your Instagram, but I just don't remember the
it's at ketopsych.
What are you planning on doing with that?
I'm not sure. I was thinking it should be something to put out information or these studies that are not known about. Like, let's say the case study about schizophrenia, or these other things in the literature. And some of my posts are that, some of my posts are just food. I realized Instagram isn't a great place to screenshot academic research papers and
unless you wrote it. If you wrote here, it's one thing.
Yeah, like I don't know. It was just something like see if I can bring more awareness, and I don't know. I'll keep posting and see what happens.
Absolutely, bro. There are people in. Look, let me get the list again. Hold on one sec. There are people in Canada, the Philippines, Ireland, Cambodia, India, and maybe Australia right now that are in the United States that are probably watching. You keep posting it because I watch your the food that you posted. I follow it.
So, are you going to be trying the keto diet?
I did. I tried it. The problem is actually. Could you speak a little bit about what's the meter that you have to use to actually see if you're in ketosis?
Yeah. So
what is that?
So there are devices similar to what diabetics use to test their blood sugar, to basically measure the ketones in your blood. And it's optional. You don't really have to use it. I think it can be useful if, you avoid carbs, you get into ketosis, and then let's say you go out for a meal and you're not sure if there were some hidden carbs in the sauce that you had, or, so on and so forth. And, or you had like a keto dessert and you're not sure if it was, if you stayed in ketosis after having like a certain number of carbs or a certain number of sweets. So that's what I use it for. I definitely don't check myself every day. But if, a lot of times I can tell without even using the meter that I ate too much sugar, because I'll feel lousy the next day. But, if you're a curious person and you want to know, then it's a good thing, but it's not something that's required.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, the short answer is no. And I will tell you the reason why. I have been able to take out, like, I don't drink soda anymore either. And the reason why is some things, if you just don't buy it, you stop using it or stop drinking it, and you just forget that it's there. I drink water all day. Very rarely do I even drink coffee. But when I do drink coffee, I'll get, my drink, my white chocolate mocha with soy milk. I love that drink. It's full of sugar. But I've tried to approach my diet and other health concerns with moderation, because I don't think I have a gluten allergy or any other allergies like that. I'm already a pretty thin guy. I mean, my only issue is high blood pressure, and I try to exercise that away with like just exercise and running.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, it's terrible. But again, I exercise, and I just try to take care of it that way. I've also I used to eat, we're talking 2.5 entrees anytime I would go out. And I don't know if you remember back at County, but I would eat 2 chicken sandwiches at once, plus fries, plus something else. And I just don't do that anymore. No, I take the bread off and I just eat the contents inside. So,
well, I noticed too though you skip lunch a lot.
Yeah, I just don't anymore.
So you might be more like a lot of keto people are proponents of intermittent fasting, like eating fewer meals a day, having a large fasting period, and so you might, and I can't do it. I'm just not suited. I run out of energy. I get jittery. But you might be suited to something like that where you don't have to go keto, but it's called OMAD, 1 meal a day, and a lot of people have lost a lot of weight or have also reversed diabetes by just eating 1 meal a day or eating 1 meal every, and it's a big meal. You got to make up your, 1,700 to 2,000 calories or whatever.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I'm already like, I'm trying hard to put on weight. I don't want to lose. That's the thing. I don't want to lose weight.
You don't want to lose weight.
Yeah, I don't have the reason to lose weight. The one thing that I think that I would benefit from would be the cognitive fog. Because after you eat, I just fall asleep.
Yeah.
That's just because my body's able to, release insulin. That's probably why I'm thin. I just store fat and everything else appropriately. But again, my arteries are probably screaming due to the blood pressure. So, I think for me, I don't have the, what would I call it?
You don't have the motive or the reason.
The motive or the reason. Exactly. Yeah. But if I needed to, I think I could, but I would definitely struggle with, I can take out the bread and everything, but pasta and, and I don't eat that much sugar, candy and stuff like that. But there are little things that I just, and again, when I was trying to actually do like a keto thing, just looking at the labels, I just couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. Everything had a carb in it. Everything had a carb. You look at a bottle of ketchup, you know how much sugar?
Ketchup has a ton of sugar.
It's just a ton of sugar.
I used to love barbecue sauce. Oh. And but actually there is a really good low carb barbecue sauce now.
Of course there is.
Because Ray's, Sweet Baby Ray's, they started making a Ray's no sugar added kind of sauce, especially the hickory one.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good. It's actually good. Like a lot of people tried to make keto barbecue sauces and they were not good, but this one's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean all of the replacement foods, I'll tell you what, if I were going to eat or switch to like a vegetarian meal or something like that, is a black bean burger, I can eat that. That's actually pretty good if I were trying to eliminate meat. But overall, like turkey burgers, there's only one type that I found that was actually any good. The other ones are just it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's just hard. And I don't have the motivation to.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'll think about it.
Well, if the blood pressure is a concern for you, I don't know how bad it is, but
it's not with exercise, but yeah.
But the mechanism, the way insulin is related to blood pressure is that insulin will cause your kidneys to retain salt. And so a lot of times people that go keto, their blood pressures will also normalize because they're not having as much insulin, the kidneys aren't retaining as much salt, and so it drops back into a normal range. So,
but how often will I have my white chocolate mocha with soy?
Oh, get it with heavy cream instead of the milk and the sugar.
You need the sugar. You can't. Okay. All right. But anything else you wanna go over?
Wow, man, I didn't know I had some. I feel like I rambled. I don't know how long we've been going, but it's kind of like.
How long has it been? About an hour, 9 minutes. It's pretty good.
Well, yeah, I enjoyed this. There's just a lot of stuff swimming in my head. I don't have all the studies and all the names of people just like off the top of my head, but
it's fine, man. No one's listening to
I guess
bullshit. It's okay. Just generally speaking.
I guess I retain when I listen to all this stuff and there's just this like all this stuff in my head, and it's fun and interesting to just be able to put it out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, man, when I talk to you about certain stuff, again, all right, I think your eyes did. I won't show it on the camera, but your eyes just kind of like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my mom, I told you my family actually found my podcast. Listen, I just said a curse word. I'm sorry. my family found my podcast and my website. Don't at me. Mom about my cursing. Yeah, man, I think that's everything.
Yeah.
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 So if people were interested in following you or finding you, what's your Twitter, Instagram, all that? What? How do they find you?
What's my? I don't know. I don't know if I have a special Twitter handle. Just you can search my name, Ara Darakjian. It's probably hard to spell that out.
Let me do it. Darakjian.
That's correct. You got it.
Ara Darakjian. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll put all that information in the write up below with all the links and stuff, so they'll be able to find it. And you also have a private practice.
I have a private practice. Its web URL is www.darakjianpsych.com. PSYCH psych, and Darakjian, like how Thomas just spelled it.
Like an expert, I spelled your last name.
Oh man,
I'm down with the Armenian culture.
Yeah.
Man. I told you that.
Yeah, you're
I'm gonna have to cut that.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. It's fine.
Yes, I have a private practice. I do. For my website, I do offer, some consultation regarding diet. So if that's something you want to do, you can contact me. But also with my private practice, it's not a general psychiatric practice, but it's very heavily focused on therapy for depression, anxiety, and interpersonal problems. So that's another passion of mine.
I mean, you might as well go. You do ISTDP, just a little bit. You got time. ISTDP. What is that?
Oh man, this is a whole.
You don't have to go in depth, but just so people. This is for the people in Ireland, Canada.
All right. Well, I'm passionate about psychotherapy for depression, anxiety, interpersonal problems. I also do prescribe meds, so don't get me wrong, but I think psychotherapy can be very powerful. I think the predominant form of psychotherapy these days is cognitive behavior therapy. That wasn't always the case. Previously, psychodynamic or psychoanalytic therapy was really the more prominent, and in the last, I guess, 40, 50 years, CBT has risen up. And, I also don't denigrate CBT. I think it can be helpful, but I think there's certain people who can benefit more from a dynamic standpoint. And so generally speaking, that's the type of therapy I do. More specifically, a lot of dynamic therapy can kind of be without specific aims or goals, and this is a specific type of therapy. And what it means by dynamic is that it attempts to explore unconscious things that are happening outside your awareness, things inside of you but outside of your awareness. And so this specific type of therapy, ISTDP, or intensive short-term dynamic psychotherapy, the main idea is that these unconscious forces are mainly based off of emotions that are being repressed or avoided in certain ways, and that being able to bring up these unconscious emotions is a problem, or is a way to effectively deal with them. There's also a lot about ways of regulating anxiety, and that you can, if you have a lot of unregulated anxiety, you might not be able to tolerate these emotions. So a lot of times you got to go more slowly. And then oftentimes there's a secondary problem. Well, it's not secondary, but it's another important problem of closeness. That with the therapist, there's blocks to that being able to be close with people that also prevent people from really benefiting from therapy. So I guess in a nutshell, that's the ways that the ISTDP model tries to work through resistance that really gets in the way of people benefiting from psychotherapy,
Resistance being when there are things that people are doing incorrectly and they almost know that they're doing incorrectly, but for some reason they're stopping themselves from correcting the problem.
Yeah.
In a nutshell.
Resistance also can be conscious or unconscious.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people are consciously resisting, emotions or other things. But a lot of the times they are doing so in an unconscious way. Yeah. And so that becomes the job of the therapist to point those out and help them see how they're actually doing damage to themselves by avoiding these feelings or not paying attention to their feelings or their anxiety.
That's one reason why I'm not doing ISTDP at the Cube. I don't do ISTDP. It's a tough mode of therapy, but I always looked at it as very effective. Just like for me, it just seems like it just cuts through all of the BS. Yeah. And it gets right to the root of the problem.
Yeah.
So that's what I've always respected about it. It's just not my type. I do CBT.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to master. And,
yeah.
And if you're not careful, you can really get into a lot of trouble.
Well, that's why they have a specialist like you. Oh, okay. All right, man. I think we're all finished. Anything else?
No, just thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun, and let's do this again sometime.
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, I'm gonna say it for the 10th time today. Canada, Philippines, Ireland, Cambodia, India, maybe Australia. I want to hear from you. Find me. Don't actually fly to Los Angeles, but find me. Find me online. All right, man. We're all finished. Thank you for coming. All right, we're done.